steep hills. It's part of the Hudson Highlands. And people from out west, Colorado or Alaska, they might scoff at the notion that we call them mountains. But in Nelsonville, that's what we call them, the mountains. They're steep, and they can be dangerous to climb if you aren't prepared. One of the trails there is called Breakneck Ridge. It's one of the most popular hiking trails in the East. And on a good weekend day, there can be as many as 1,000 or sometimes more than 1,000 hikers on Breakneck Ridge. And it's also then a location of many rescues of hikers who don't come prepared, arriving by train, planning to hike in flip-flops, lacking proper hiking gear like sufficient water and flashlights and maps. Why do people like to climb hills or mountains? For some, it's the challenge. For others, it can be the prize awaiting them after a strenuous climb, a prize of spectacular vistas, such as the ones you can see from my hills, my mountains, behind our house, views of the Hudson River and the Hudson Valley. And then there's that famous quote, the mountain climber George Lehigh Mallory, who, when he was asked why he wanted to climb Mount Everest, he answered calmly, because it's there. Well, in our gospel text today, we hear of Jesus climbing a mountain with Peter, James, and John. And Jesus has a purpose. Luke says he went up the mountain to pray. His purpose was not exercise or the challenge of climbing or the view. But one thing is for sure, Peter, James, and John certainly saw a sight that they would never forget. Luke reports that while Jesus was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. And suddenly the three disciples saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking about that's Jesus' departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now, this event is one of many events in the life of Jesus that have been rendered, that is to say, written as icons of the early church. Now, the icon is a type of religious art that is more than a painting. It's literally a window into the event that is portrayed. A person contemplating a well-written icon can be brought into the actual event that is being depicted. It's hard to describe, but prayerful contemplation of an icon can have the effect of suspending time and bringing a person closer to God. Now, the icon of the Transfiguration, in it, we are presented with a circle of light, a sphere of light surrounding Jesus, who's at the center, who's robed in white. In this light stands Moses, to the right, with a book, or the tablets of stone. That would be the 10 Commandments. Excuse me. He's holding them in one hand, and they represent the law. Elijah is to the left, representing the prophets. And they both point to Jesus, acknowledging that they have seen in him the face of God, and that through his coming death and resurrection will begin the new covenant, foreshadowed and prepared by the law and the prophets. And Peter, James, and John are also depicted there below them, witnessing this miraculous event. Now let's think about those two giants of the Bible who appeared and spoke with Jesus. First, we consider Moses. Now, God spoke through Moses, and from him come our first 5 books of the Bible. And in these books, we hear of creation, the fall of Adam and Eve, the flood, and the repopulating of the world by Noah and his descendants. We learn of the remarkable faith of Abraham, which is the foundation of our understanding of how we become justified by God, even though we are sinners. From Moses, we learn of the story of Joseph, which was in last week's readings. And we learn of how Moses himself, through the strength of God, led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt and journeyed to the land promised to them by God. And we learn also how God spoke to Moses high on a mountaintop and gave him the foundational laws, the 10 Commandments, to deliver to the people. And in these commandments we learn how we are to relate to God and how God wants us to relate to each other. So through Moses, God has shown us the beginnings of creation, the early struggles of his chosen people, and his plan for all of creation. Now we turn to Elijah. And perhaps we could ask why he's the other person who appears in glory with Jesus. After all, there were other prophets, many of whom wrote large sections of the Bible. Names such as Samuel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel come to mind. And then what about David, the great king of Israel, the one with whom God made the covenant which stated that all future kings of Israel would come from his family line? Well, it's true that Elijah did not write any books of the Bible. In fact, we learn about him through the books of the Bible, the books of Kings and Chronicles. But what we learn is that not only is he a mighty prophet, but he's also a mighty miracle worker. His tremendous faith in God gave him the power to work these miracles, and they were not miracles meant simply to dazzle. They had a purpose. They had the purpose of bringing faith to non-believers. And so God sent Elijah into the Gentile country, and there he met with a widow in Zarephath. And she was down to her last bit of food and fuel and was preparing a meal for her and her son and then to die. But Elijah convinced her to let him share in this meal and promised that it would not be her last. And all this came to be. And the widow's son was gravely ill, and Elijah brought him back to life. Because of God working through Elijah, this Gentile widow became a believer. In a sense, both she and her son were brought back to life and given new life through faith in the true and living God of Israel. And as wonderful as that was, God worked something far grander in scale through Elijah. Back in Israel, King Ahab and his wife Jezebel were worshiping false gods of Baal and Asherah. In fact, they were building temples to these gods and encouraging the Israelites to defy the first commandment and worship these gods. And all of this included all sorts of unclean practices, rituals, and even child sacrifice. Well, Elijah challenged the 450 priests of Baal and the 400 priests of Asherah to a contest to prove whose God was the true living God. And in doing so, he exposed their fraud and had them put to death. And this won the hearts of the people of Israel, who then turned back to their true God. And at the same time, though, it led Ahab and Jezebel on a campaign to have Elijah killed. But ultimately, it was they who were killed in a very brutal way. And Elijah, you know the story. He did not die, but he was taken up to heaven in a chariot before the eyes of his successor, the prophet Elisha. And we learn from the prophet Malachi that Elijah would appear again, signaling the coming of the Messiah. Now, Jesus himself identified John the Baptist as the spiritual successor to Elijah. And here our gospel text today, Elijah appears with Moses. And not only does he appear, but the two of them are pointing at Jesus as the one who was prophesied from the beginning. And they speak with him about his departure, which he would accomplish at Jerusalem. So it is, in this dazzling and probably blinding light, that Peter and James and John hear this conversation. But most importantly, they hear the voice of God the Father. And it's a voice speaking a message we've encountered before at the baptism of Jesus, where God said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." But this time God adds three more important words. Listen to him. message of the Transfiguration. Jesus is glorified by this glorious light. The two luminaries of Holy Scripture appear, point to him as the Messiah, and discuss what is about to take place. And God the Father speaks to Peter, James, and John, the leaders of the disciples, and he gives them the message that they are to take with them down the mountain to pass on to the other disciples, and then to pass on to all they would encounter in their ministry. And the message is those three words: listen to him. The message of the Transfiguration, the message to the whole world, and the message to us, especially right now, as we are coming close to beginning Lent, is to listen to Jesus. The Israelites heard the words of God spoken through Moses, and after that, they began their 40-year journey to the Promised Land. And we are now hearing the words of God as we will shortly begin our 40-day journey to the cross and to the empty tomb. These three words: listen to him, listen to Jesus. In Lent, we have the gift of being called to slow down, to consider our lives, our relationship with God, and our relationships with our families and all the people we encounter. Through prayer, we have the gift of raising our concerns for ourselves and for others, confessing our shortcomings, asking and receiving mercy, and offering thanksgiving. We are called to slow down and become quiet so that we can listen to Jesus. Jesus climbed the holy mountain not for the challenge or the exercise or the views. Jesus climbed the holy mountain to pray. He humbled himself physically and spiritually so that he would be exalted in the Transfiguration. And in a very short time, according to the conversation with Moses and Elijah, Jesus would accomplish his ultimate humility, his passion and torturous death on the cross, which would lead to his ultimate exaltation and glory, resurrection. As we are about to enter our season of atonement, let us humble ourselves in prayer, contemplation, remembering also to be thinking, contemplating the image of the Transfiguration, the event that depicts all of God's story for us: Moses, Elijah, law, and prophecy, all pointing to Jesus on his way to the cross for our sins. All to the glory of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.